So let's talk about how to interview customers remotely. My name is Justin Wilcox. I'm one of the founders of TeachingEntrepreneurship.org, and in this video I want to talk specifically about how to find people to interview when you're working in a strictly remote context. So like when everyone is on quarantine or lockdown. Now in this scenario, obviously a lot of things have changed, including the problems that people are trying to solve. People's daily lives have changed, the things that they're worried about, they're stressed out about, those have all changed as well. So a lot has changed in that realm, but the interviewing process is largely the same. So in here we'll talk about how we can apply the process of interviewing customers and finding them to interview. And you'll notice that it's really the same in terms of what you do if you're not in a lockdown. So what I mean by that is the secret to interviewing customers is to find people who want to talk about their problems. So how do you figure out who wants to talk about their problems? Well, you identify people who are actively looking for solutions to their problems. All right, so let's talk about an example. Let's say I wanted to solve the problem of working while homeschooling being stressful. So there's a bunch of parents who are now trying to balance both homeschooling and working in a lockdown or quarantine scenario. And if I want to find people to interview to validate whether or not this is actually a problem and see if I can find any early adopters to solve it, I need to figure out where are people who are experiencing this problem looking for solutions right now. So to answer that question, you simply ask yourself, well, where would you go to look for solutions to this problem? So put yourself in your hypothetical customer's shoes and ask yourself, okay, if I'm a working parent who suddenly has to homeschool and I find it stressful, where would I go to look for a solution to that problem? Now, it's really helpful to delineate here between looking for a solution to a problem versus coping with a problem. So you might feel like, hey, I could find a solution to this problem, the stress of homeschooling my kids, at the bottom of a wine glass. But that would count as coping with the problem. That's not actually looking for a solution to it. So ask yourself, okay, if you were struggling with the stress of homeschooling and working, where would you look for solutions to that problem? So some ideas might come to mind, like maybe you would go and try and visit some online groups, like Facebook, Reddit, any sort of forums, Google groups, places where people congregate that have these types of problems or these type of people, and that those people with those problems might look for advice. Another place you might look, maybe you would read some blogs. You would go and you would Google and you'd find some people writing about these challenges. So an example, there's really a website called workingwhilehomeschooling.com. So that's another place that one might look for solutions to this problem. Maybe they would go on social media. They'd look on Twitter or they'd look on Pinterest for ideas. You could maybe even search for the hashtag homeschooling. Maybe you would ask friends. Maybe if you are a parent struggling with this, you might have other parent friends. And so you could ask them, like, what are you doing about this? So any sort of personal relationships or personal referrals might be places where you could go. So if you have friends who are in this situation, you might be able to go talk to them and figure out if there are people looking for solutions to these problems. Books are a great place to solve problems, right? You know, maybe there's a book written for new homeschooling parents or folks who are working while homeschooling. So Amazon.com would be a great place to go find people who were looking for solutions to these problems here. And then, you know, maybe there's a training course out there. Maybe there's people out there who like specifically train other people on how to deal with this, with these challenges. So maybe a place like Coursera is a place, or even, you know, some websites will offer their own programs. So Googling for these training programs might be able to help. All right, so this is just a list of some potential places that you could look for a solution to the problem. And these are all places that you might be able to find customers to interview. These are all places that you could find people who are actively looking for solutions to these problems. So now the question is, if you go to these online groups or blogs or social media, you know, just because you find a group doesn't mean you can necessarily find people in that group who are willing to be interviewed by you. So now we're going to talk about how do you figure out which subset of the people in these communities or these channels might be willing to have a conversation with you. So again, you're looking for people who are actively trying to solve the problem, and you're looking for clues, actions they're taking that tell you that they're still struggling with this problem. So for example, in the online group scenario, maybe you would go on to Facebook or Reddit and you would look for someone who's asking for advice, who's explicitly saying, hey, I'm having trouble balancing, my work and homeschool, and I'm frustrated or I'm stressed out about it. That's a perfect person to contact and try and have a customer interview with. For a blog, now just because someone reads a blog doesn't mean that you'll be able to find them and contact them and ask them for an interview. But if they've left a comment and they say something like, oh my gosh, this is really resonating with me, or even better, they ask a question of the author, that could be someone who's a great target. This is someone who's clearly looking for a solution to the problem. Maybe they have other questions. Their needs aren't being fully met by what's written in the blog, and so they might be willing to talk to you and say, yeah, I'm still struggling with this problem. On social media, anyone, again, like the online groups, anyone asking for advice is a great place to look. So use that hashtag and look for people who are asking questions of the community to get their feedback. In terms of asking friends, if you go to your friends and ask them, has anyone asked you about this problem? So let's say you're not a parent, and so you haven't struggled with this problem yourself, but you have friends who are parents, and then you can ask them and say, hey, instead of just asking a parent friend to introduce you to someone else and say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so because I'm looking to interview parents who are having these problems, instead ask your referral source and say, hey, has anyone asked you about this problem? Have you talked to anyone about this challenge? And then anyone they bring up, that's someone who could be actively trying to solve the problem, and that's someone you want to interview. So it's important when you're asking for referrals, when you're asking for sort of personal contacts. You don't want to just talk to anyone that someone happens to know. Like, oh, do you know another parent that I can talk to? You really want to find those parents or those referrals who are actively looking for a solution to the problem. Okay, so in the book side of things, so let's say, just because someone is buying a book on Amazon doesn't mean that they're interested in talking to you or that you could even find them. But if they leave a negative review or even sort of a middling review about a book saying, yeah, it was okay, but I could have used some more practical advice here, that might be someone who's a perfect target for you to reach out and interview, because again, they're not fully satisfied with the solution they found so far, and maybe they're still looking for one. And then similarly with a training course, if someone is out there saying, yeah, I took this training course and it was okay but not great, maybe they leave a review directly in the course or they talk about it on Twitter, this is a great place to go look. Sort of along the lines of a competitor. If you think someone out there is offering a competitive solution to a problem that you would like to offer, if you find people out there who are sort of wanting for more from your competitor or speaking negatively about that competitor, those are another great place to find people who would be willing to talk about their current problems. All right, so these are all places that you can go to look for people to interview, and what to look for once you get to those places in terms of the key people who might be most interested in interviewing. So now, how do you actually reach out to them? What do you say to get them enticed to have a conversation with you? So I'm going to give you basically a 5-sentence approach to cold outreach. And you can use this approach whether you're sending emails or Facebook messages or messages in a forum or group. The same sort of framework can apply. So the 5 sentences are, number 1, you're going to have a sentence about them. Something that shows that this is not a generic email you're sending to a bunch of people. You're reaching out to them personally. Your second sentence is going to connect the two of you together, show that you have something in common. The third sentence is going to describe the problem that they have that you are trying to solve. The fourth sentence is going to be some sort of offer of value to them. So some reason that they should actually take the time to have a conversation with you. And then the fifth sentence is going to be your ask of them, what you're asking of them. Basically, will you interview with me? So let me show you an example of what this might look like. So again, the scenario is I'm reaching out to parents who are struggling balancing working and homeschooling. So imagine I went on Facebook and I sent someone a Facebook message that said something like this, like, "Hi, I love the picture you posted to the Working While Homeschooling Facebook group. Your daughter is adorable." So it's something personal about them. My mom has a similar picture of me when I used my bedroom wall to learn about the difference between permanent markers and washable crayons. So this is that connection, that connecting sentence that shows that, look, we have something in common here. All right. Third sentence, I'm reaching out because I saw your post on the challenges of balancing work and homeschool. So you're hinting at the problem that they have expressed some interest in trying to solve. Fourth sentence, the offer. I know you're crazy busy now, but would you be up for a quick conversation? I'm working on a class project that could help, and I'd like to get your input on it. So notice that I'm not describing the solution I want to build. I'm simply hinting that there could be an offer of value to them. I'm saying I'm trying to solve this problem. So it could, and I could end up helping you. So that could be valuable to them. And then the second piece of value is a little more obscure. It's not quite as obvious. And that is that you're working on a class project and you'd like to get their input. People generally feel good about helping others, especially students. So it might be something that also is valuable to them, the idea that they could help someone out. So this is the offer. These are the two things that are valuable, potentially valuable to them. And now you make the ask. If you're free this Thursday or Friday night, maybe after kids go to bed, I'd love to connect via Zoom. It's really helpful to provide a specific meeting time, suggest something that they can either agree to immediately, or they can offer a counter and say, "Oh, I'm not busy then, or not available then, but maybe on Saturday or something, Sunday." All right, so that's an example of a 5-sentence cold outreach. Again, feel free to change this as you see fit, but it's a nice template to work from. All right, so you put together this outreach, you go into these channels. Now it's worth noting that not everyone will agree to your interview. So it's good to know ahead of time that you should have basically an intention to ask 30 people for interviews. Of those 30, hopefully you'll be able to schedule 10. And of those 10 that you schedule, you'll actually be able to conduct 5. Oftentimes, these people who are nice enough to agree to be interviewed, they get busy, things come up, they just forget, and they don't actually convert on the interviews. So set your expectations that if you want to interview 5 people, you need to ask for at least 30. All right, well, that is a quick introduction to finding customers to interview when you're working exclusively remotely. Remember, in these sort of weird, different scenarios, the problems will definitely have changed, but the interview process remains the same. So how you find people to interview and even the questions you ask are going to remain the same. Best of luck interviewing customers remotely. My name is Justin Wilcox from TeachingEntrepreneurship.org. Please let us know if you have any questions or need any help at all.